Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicola D'Alberton. I'm a researcher for the University of Trento, and I'm part of the organizing committee of these ESIC seminars. In the recent meetings, we've been discussing about several topics, among which green energies, circular economy, water resource management. Today, we will discuss about nature-based solution for sustainable cities and landscape. Briefly, we will start with an introduction by Jarumi Kato Huerta, and then we will have the speeches from two guests, which are Emmanuelle Cohen-Shacham and Adam Ismail. At the end, as usual, we will have a little bit of time to discuss and debate and time for answering questions. And at the end, we will, maybe with the people in presence, we will discuss a little bit about technical aspects and a little bit about your feeling about these groups of seminars. So you can give us a little bit as a feedback. Okay, so I will invite Jarumi Kato Huerta. She's a PhD candidate here at the University of Trento. She's expert in the themes of nature-based solutions. And yeah, I will briefly leave the floor.
Just to confirm, can you see my screen? Yes? Okay. Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. As Nicola was saying, I'm very close to finish my PhD. I'm working with the links between the concepts of environmental justice and nature-based solutions. And today I've been asked to give you this very brief talk on the topic of nature-based solutions in urban areas. To start, I think that we are all aware of the different pressing challenges that we need to face in these environments, such as heat, flooding, air pollution. And I think that it became very clear, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, that the lack of interaction of communities with natural and open spaces actually reduce the health and well-being of urban citizens. In my opinion, these kind of issues and also the pressing climate emergency has made communities and planners, but also governments, more aware of the potential role of nature in mitigating these type of challenges. And well, I think that the main task that we have as planners right now is bringing back nature into cities in order to confront these pressing issues. I have someone here, okay. So well, nature-based solutions have been defined by the European Commission as those solutions are inspired and supported by nature, which are cost-effective and that simultaneously provide environmental, social, and economic benefits. So if we think about the kind of benefits that nature-based solutions provide, first of all, they represent areas where we can interact with different kind of urban communities, meaning that they provide social cohesion. They also provide us with not only physical health, but also mental health and well-being. Let's remember that nature-based solutions are one of the fundamental stressors relievers in urban areas. They also provide heat mitigation and they, let's say, reduce the risk of having to endure flooding in our urban systems. And last but not least, they can enhance the pathways toward green jobs and green economies in urban areas. And I think this is probably one of the fundamental aspects of nature-based solution. And it's the fact that they are action-oriented, meaning that they are specifically conceptualized in order to address the type of challenges that we have to face in urban areas. But how do nature-based solutions look like in cities? Well, they are mainly made by natural features, urban ecosystems, and biodiversity elements. This means that we're going to have solutions that are going to mix between vegetation elements with other kind of infrastructure, as is the case of urban parks or green corridors or urban forests. We're going to have other types of areas where people gather together to produce high quality food products, as is the case of community gardens. We have a lot here in Trento. But we are also going to have this other type of infrastructure that is mixing vegetation with the building structure of our cities. And these types of solutions are super important, especially if we don't have spatial opportunities to implement on-the-ground solutions. And this usually happens if we are working with highly built-up areas. So I think one challenge that we as planners have is to thinking about innovative ways of integrating vegetation in our built environment by also considering the urban form and the structure of our cities. So as I was saying, nature-based solutions enhance and work with natural features, their structures, and their ecological functions to provide a wide range of ecosystem services. These services has basically all the benefits that we can obtain from natural environments. So for example, these services can be absorption of carbon dioxide, the reduction of acoustic pollution, the creation of new habitats, and also the reduction of water runoff. But we should not forget about the important cultural ecosystem services, as is the case of the enhancement of recreational opportunities. And of course, nature-based solutions bring aesthetic values into our cities. But we have to consider that for this solution to provide all these ecosystem services, we need to take into consideration their structure, their size, the shape, the kind of vegetation species that we are going to use. We also need to think about the potential location of our beneficiaries. And like as I was saying at the beginning, we also need to consider the structures of our cities. So just to give you an example, when we have already think about these different configurations that can provide so many benefits for cities, these nature-based solutions are going to provide a wide range of ecosystem services, such as this is the case of constructed wetlands. They are going to provide food. They are going to enhance our water quality. They are going to provide aesthetic value. They are going to help us with erosion control, and of course, with carbon sequestration, with diverse levels of intensity. And these different kind of ecosystem services are going to help us to address the kind of pressing urban challenges in urban areas, as is the case of resource degradation, food insecurity. They are going to help us to enhance our quality of life. And of course, they are helping us with the mitigation of climate change effects. And I think this is one of the most important, let's say, characteristics of nature-based solutions, especially in urban areas, that they are multifunctional for diverse challenges. And well, here at the University of Trento, in the Planes laboratory, we're mainly working with the topic of nature-based solutions, but combining with other critical issues, such as, for my case, environmental justice, ecosystem service assessment for urban planning and land use decisions, the transfer of development rights, and of course, planning for climate change. We have also participated in different research and innovation Horizon 2020 nature-based solutions projects that have been funded by the European Commission. And we have an upcoming course on nature-based solutions for environmental engineering that is starting in September. So if you're curious or you want to know more about this topic, you can have a look at our webpage. And you can also follow us on Twitter, because from time to time, we post job opportunities there. So I thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you're going to enjoy the rest of the seminar.
Okay, thank you very much, Jarumi, for the interesting presentation. Now I would like to leave the floor to Professor Emmanuelle Cohen-Shacham. Sorry if I misspelled the name. Professor Emmanuelle is a consultant, researcher, and group leader working at the interface between science, policy, and practice on nature conservation, environmental sciences, and policy projects. She's currently adjunct professor at Drew University. She leads the thematic group on nature-based solution at the EUCN Commission on Ecosystem Management, and she's been co-leading IUCN work on NBS since 2014. I think I said enough, and I would leave the floor to our guest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicola. Can you hear me? Yeah, and thank you to the previous speaker. I didn't see your name anywhere, but I'm curious about your work. It was a good presentation, and good luck with your defense. Okay, so I'll be starting my presentation. Can you see my screen? Because we had problems earlier. I hope the Zoom is not going to fall like before. I think it's going to quit again.
1 second, we see
a note here.
Still black, but
I think my Zoom is going to end.
Some technical problems. Okay, so only 1 second.
I will try again. If
Okay.
it doesn't work, I will have to restart my computer. I've never had this, so I'm sorry for the technical issue. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, now we see perfectly.
Oh, great.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so well, good evening, everyone. I mean, here it's still morning. I'm based in the eastern side of the US, close to New York. My name is Emmanuelle Cohen-Shacham, and I'm leading the thematic group on nature-based solutions at the IUCN CEM. So I'm happy, thank you for inviting me to this Environmental Sustainability and International Cooperation Seminar Series. And I'm happy to present some of the more, of the work that we've done at nature-based solutions in the past few years on nature-based solutions at IUCN and at CEM. Can you see my slide change?
Yes, now yes.
Okay. So I'll be presenting first, just to give you a brief overview of what IUCN and CEM are. For those that are not aware, I think it's important to get this background. Then I will talk about the evolution of nature-based solutions. I will present briefly the IUCN conceptual and definitional framework for nature-based solutions, our work on the nature-based solutions principle, or I'll just use NBS for the rest of my presentation. I'll present some examples of NBS, the global standard on for nature-based solutions, NBS, also the global standards governance structure, and some update on our current work at IUCN CEM. So IUCN stands for the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. It is a membership union that is composed of government and civil society organization. It was established in 1948, but it has grown into the largest environmental network. There are three main parts to the IUCN. There is the IUCN Secretariat that has over 900 staff members that are located in 50 countries or over 50 countries. There are about 1,500 members, member organizations that are state and government agencies, NGOs, non-governmental organization from the local to the international level, indigenous peoples organization, scientific and academic institutions, business association, and so on. All of these are members of the IUCN. So these are the two first part, and the third part is commissions. There are 6 commissions and now a new commission on, it's called the Climate Crisis Commission, where I don't know if this number is updated. I couldn't find any more updated, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's over 10,000 experts that are part of these, one of these 6 or 7 commissions now. So the 6 commissions have, as I said, I mean, it's all the members, the 10,000, over 10,000 members are volunteer scientists and experts. And I, as scientists, if you're interested in any aspect of nature conservation, I would definitely urge you to join either one of these commissions. So there are like the Species Survival Committee, the World Commission on Environmental Law, the World Commission on Protected Areas, the Commission on Environmental, Economic and Social Policy, the Commission on Education and Communication, the Commission on Ecosystem Management, or CEM, where I'm leading the thematic group on nature-based solutions, and that new commission that is called the Climate Crisis Commission that currently has Emmanuelle Vidal, that has been appointed as its chair. Now, to go back to the member organization, to those 1,500 member organization, these are all part of there is a democratic process that is happening, and they can all vote resolutions. As part of the IUCN community. Now, those resolutions are voted for mainly at an event called the IUCN World Conservation Congress, or the WCC, that is usually happening every 4 years. Of course, with COVID, and we've had some changes. But it's an enormous event that is happening, and a lot of the priorities and the work programs and the resolutions are passed during that event. And just to give you some examples, some past congresses have produced key international environmental agreements, like the ones that are mentioned here, like the Convention on Biological Diversity, World Heritage Convention, Ramsar Convention, etc. Now, just to summarize what IUCN in general does, I would say that it works in 3 different aspects. It is supporting research, practice, and policy. It is supporting research projects at different levels. It's supporting projects that are implemented in the field all over the globe. And it's providing a neutral platform for all of these organizations, the government, NGOs, scientists, businesses, local communities, indigenous people group, to work together and to develop and to implement solutions to our environmental challenges. And the result is really the development of policy, of laws, of management tools, among others, of course. So this is a very brief overview of what IUCN is. And those 2 pictures are pictures that I took at the WCC in 2016, where there were 2 where we were launching the work that I'm about to present on the nature-based solutions. So as a background for that work on nature-based solutions, I will mention that a lot of the knowledge and the experience that has helped to develop nature-based solution, or NBS, comes from earlier work, such as the ecosystem approach by the CBD, the work on ecosystem-based adaptation, on ecosystem-based mitigation, on EcoDRR, on ecosystem services, and so forth. But I would say that it's only in probably the past 9 years or so that the concept has really started to be defined and developed as such. So 6, 7, 8, 9 past years. And there has been a huge increase in interest for nature-based solutions, whether it's, as you can see here, very much in the summary, huge increase for NBS, whether it's in research with the exponential increase of gray and white literature, in practice with nature-based solutions projects and application growing all over the globe, and in policy. And that increase in policy or nature-based solutions in policy can be observed by the integration of nature-based solutions in national policy for some countries, and of course at the international level, with NBS being increasingly referred to in several international events and international platforms to address the major societal challenges, especially lately in the context of the biodiversity and the climate change crisis. So with regards to the IUCN work on NBS, on which I'm focusing, it has evolved over time from the more conceptual to the operational type of work for NBS. So it was defined as a third. You see these are the WCCs that I was mentioning in World Conservation Congress. So in 2012, it was defined, NBS was defined as one of the 3 pillars of the global program of IUCN. And it evolved into this definition. I mean, it was worked during several years. And then in the next WCC, there was the launch of the work on nature-based solutions with a definition that was adopted by the entire IUCN community through those resolutions. One of the resolutions that I was mentioning earlier, an adopted definition and a list of principles for NBS. as well as an important publication that was explaining more in detail what NBS are about. Then the work on the principles has been further developed, and it evolved into the operational framework with the development of the global standard for NBS that was launched in 2020. And lately there was the launch of the ISC, the International Standard Committee, which is really, what I say, pinpointing the governance structure of the global standard. So the nature-based solutions for IUCN is defined as actions to protect, to manage, and to restore natural or modified ecosystem, which address societal challenges effectively and adaptively, providing human well-being and biodiversity benefits. And by those main societal challenges, what we are considering or what we are highlighting is climate change, disaster risk, is economic and social development, human health, food security, water security, and ecosystem degradation and biodiversity loss. And it's important to mention that the CBD ecosystem approach, as I mentioned earlier, is the foundation of the work on NBS at IUCN. In addition to the definition, as I mentioned earlier, there was a list of 8 principles for nature-based solutions that were also defined and adopted in 2016, which are there that have to be considered together with the definition and that are covering several important topics that help frame what NBS are and aren't. For instance, NBS are embracing nature conservation. It's not there to replace nature conservation. It can be implemented, and it's actually we promote the implementation in synergy with other types of solutions. NBS can be determined by site-specific natural and cultural context. They provide societal benefits in a fair and equitable way, and it is important to ensure transparency in NBS implementation, maintaining biological and cultural diversity in NBS, and that NBS are applied at the landscape scale, both during the planning process and during the implementation. That we need to recognize and to address the different types of trade-offs throughout the planning and implementation of NBS. And finally, that NBS need to be integrated in policy, in action, and in measures. As I mentioned earlier, it is important to know that the IUCN work on NBS was, a lot of the knowledge was based on earlier work that was done for specific concepts. So we found it easier or useful to consider NBS as kind of an umbrella of different types of concepts that are all ecosystem based or ecosystem related. And that are all addressing different societal challenges and all that all have as outcome both benefits for human and for biodiversity. In addition, we found it useful to consider or to kind of to categorize all of these different concepts into 5 different categories. So I won't get into all the detail, but it's basically all kind of concepts such as restoration, ecological restoration, ecological engineering, management like ecosystem-based management, infrastructure like green infrastructure or natural infrastructure, issue-specific like ecosystem-based adaptation, ecosystem-based mitigation, or ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction, and protection, so area-based conservation, basically, yes. And you can find details about all of these different concepts in the 2016 publication. I would like to show here a hypothetical case that shows a protected area here that was created to provide a habitat for certain rare species, and it is located near a forest here. And on the other side, you have here, I mean, very nearby, you have a watershed that has human settlements around it. Now that watershed also has a natural barrier here with mangrove that is protected, protecting like the watershed. And now originally, or naturally, all those interrelated or interlinked ecosystem can function as a healthy ecosystem, and are able to absorb different floodings coming from inland event or from the sea. But over time, there is a number of pressure that is happening to the area, with deforestation on one side, with the degradation of the coastal line and the inland wetland ecosystems, and here some pressure here with a growing urban area that is nearby. And this, together with the effect of climate change and increased storms, leads to flooding problems affecting people's life, affecting their health, their crops, their food. And in this case, some targeted challenges, societal challenges that an NBS or a series of nature-based solutions could address are climate change, disaster risk, and flood risk, food security, and human health. So this figure is showing the result of a large NBS project that is including several integrated types of interventions. So there is a mangrove intervention, mangrove restoration on the coastline. There is green infrastructure that is happening in the city, like some tools that were presented earlier, for instance. There is wetland restoration that is here in the watershed. There is forest landscape restoration here. And what I wanted to illustrate here is two first principles that I mentioned earlier. The first is that NBS is not replacing, but it is embracing nature conservation. And in this case, the NBS, or the different types of NBS intervention here, are being complemented or reinforced through nature conservation with that protected area that is here, that is helping to reinforce forest landscape restoration. And the second one is the complementarity between NBS and other types of measures. As I mentioned, the synergy that is promoted in order to have a more successful NBS. So in this case, you see the construction of this little wall, for instance, a constructing wall in the middle that is helping and complementing the NBS. Now, it was important for the IUCN NBS framework to be relevant, of course, and adaptable in different geographic and ecological contexts. Therefore, in order to illustrate how NBS could be implemented in different contexts, whether it's to implement different types of societal challenges through different types of NBS implementation, and in different types of regions and in different types of ecosystems. In our 2016 publication, we had selected 10 different case studies around the globe that showed successful NBS implementation around in the different regions. So I won't go into them, but if you're interested, you will see, for instance, here there is one intervention in the Middle East on ecosystem-based adaptation and ecosystem-based management in a dryland and rangeland type of ecosystem in order to address food security, water security, and ecosystem and economic and social benefits. Here you have something completely different in Spain with a green infrastructure type of NBS to address climate change and human health in a urban context. Or here you have a tropical rainforest that is addressing with an NBS in a tropical rainforest that is incorporated ecological restoration, EBA, and ecosystem-based management interventions to address climate change, food security, and economic and social development. So the idea was, again, to see that that NBS can be, well, of course, to showcase those successful case studies, but to show that it can be implemented in various ways. And you're welcome to have a look at them. So now that we had, as I said, we first developed this definition and a list of principle. And before we went into the second phase, that was really the operational framework for NBS, it was important to make sure that we didn't miss anything, and that our framework, definitional and conceptual framework were strong, and that there were no gaps in our framework. So what we did is further analyze the principles and compare them to principles in different in 5 different ecosystem-based, ecosystem-related approaches that had published list of principles. And what we found out is that there were 3, these are the 8 principles of NBS, and these are principles, these are the other type of framework that we compared it to. The only ones really that we found with published principles. I mean, the mapping of the different concepts was very large, but these were the only ones that had then principles that were published. And what we found out is that there were 3 different principles. The one on promoting synergies with different types of solutions, the one regarding the scale, the landscape scale in the planning and the implementation of NBS, and the one on policy integration, that were really almost unique to the NBS framework. But what we also found out is that there were some specific terms that were either completely missing in our framework or not sufficiently emphasized in the NBS principles. And these are adaptive management and governance, the effectiveness aspect of NBS, the uncertainty, the multi-stakeholder participation, and the temporal scale and long-term stability. So it was really important to take these into account and ensure that they were part of the operational framework. So with that strong basis, again, the resolution that was passed with the definition, the principles, and the list of gaps that we had identified, we moved into developing the operational framework for NBS. And what that really was is to develop a global standard for nature-based solutions through a 2-year process in which we had dozens of internal and we had 2, either internal, we had 2 external review processes that were open to anyone, but we had also dozens of different events, one-on-one workshops in different regions, brainstorming session and so forth, and several rounds of reviews to come out with the global standard for NBS with a list of 8 criteria, 28 indicators. So those, according to these criteria, NBS needs to effectively address societal challenges. These are just a list of the 8 criteria, but there are, as I mentioned, there are 28 indicators altogether among those 8 criteria. The criteria number 2 is about designing the NBS and ensuring that is informed by scale, that NBS result in a net gain to biodiversity and ecosystem integrity, that NBS are economically feasible and viable, that NBS are based on inclusive, transparent, and empowering governance processes, that NBS equitably balance different types of trade-offs between the achievement of their primary goal and the continued provision of multiple benefits over time, that NBS are managed adaptively and that are based on evidence, and that policy integration NBS are sustainable and mainstream with an appropriate jurisdictional context. The global standard for nature-based solutions is a facilitative standard that is aiming at both setting a common basis of understanding for what NBS are or aren't, and providing a robust framework to design, to implement, to assess, to adapt, and to improve nature-based solutions interventions. And the audience that is targeted is very, very broad. I mean, there are people that are using the standard coming from different types of stakeholders, like project managers, landscape planners, development practitioners, conservationists, policymakers, people from the finance sector, government, and planners, researchers, and so forth. So there are, at the moment, there are 3 parts or 3 main products to the global standard. The first one is, well, a document, there is the link here, a document that is, well, the main document for the global standard that is really presenting each criterion with a brief guidance on what the criterion is about, the list of indicators for each criterion, as well as a case study and an informative graphic to explain very briefly what it is about. Then there is a much broader, much more detailed guidance document that is explaining more in detail, providing description and the rationale and the requirement behind each criterion and each indicator. And the last part is the self-assessment tool. So this is, at the moment, it is an Excel sheet that has each criteria and each indicator with 4 different assessment levels, from insufficient, partial to adequate and strong. And for each criterion, so you have different tabs, each criterion you have all the different indicators, and then you have guiding questions that are helping you to assess what the NBS intervention, how it could be assessed, basically. And then what I'm not writing here, but it has also a part for the rationale that is really where you're supposed to explain, or the people that are using the self-assessment tool, where they're supposed to explain how they get to the assessment. And there is a part on means of verification. So basically, you're supposed to have all the information that is helping you to provide this assessment really based on information, whether it's like different types of documents. I won't go into this. So I would just mention very briefly that there is a governance structure that is also in place for the global standard. There is it has at the moment 3 parts. The International Standard Committee that is basically kind of in charge of the overarching, it's kind of the overarching authority, or the scientific and evidence-based, providing the scientific and the evidence-based leadership to the global standard. It is also in charge or responsible to do the revisions, to set the revisions at regular points in time in the future. There is the user group that is a community of practice. Basically, all the people that are using the self-assessment tool are registering and are being part of this community of practice. And the idea is to have people able to, that will be able to communicate among themselves, whether it's according to different regions or different types of NBS that are implemented, or to address different types of societal challenges and so forth. And then the last part is national and regional hubs that are being set in different places around the globe, and that are supposed to provide the technical expertise, the capacity building for implementing the standard, also helping in adapting the global standard to the national, to the regional context, and supporting the learning, or providing a user and learning community. Now, what is really essential is that the International Standard Committee is getting the feedback from people that are actually using the standard on the ground, in order to feed this feedback into the next revision, the different versions of the standard, of course. So I'm just very briefly to show you that the International Standard Committee that is chaired by the CM chair, Angela Andrade, has been launched at the last COP in Glasgow, climate COP in Glasgow, and has a representation of different regions, different genders, different expertise. And the idea again is to have for this group really to be the overarching authority, and to provide the scientific and the evidence-based leadership of the global standard. And I would just to finish my presentation, as my time is over, I would just like to provide you some points on what we're doing at the moment. So we've moved from the definitional conceptual framework to launching the operational framework. And what we're now doing is we are in the phase for the past almost 2 years in the implementation phase of the global standards. So what we want to do at CM, at the Commission on Ecosystem Management, and this is the work that I'm currently leading, is to learn from NBS interventions around the globe, to learn from the use, specifically from the use of the global standard for nature-based solution in specific case studies, and to collect feedback from users in different contexts, and to feed this again to help the International Standard Committee. So I'm currently working together with my co-chair of the NBS thematic group. I'm working on a case study collection and analysis to collect data on NBS application in different types of contexts, with case studies that are addressing different societal challenges in different types of region, different types of ecosystem, different types of stakeholders that are involved. And the idea, of course, is to both to understand if there are any trends of NBS implementation around the globe, and to improve the standard and the criteria and the indicators with the feedback that will be collected. So we're now in the phase of collecting those case studies, just to show you that there are case studies from all around the globe. And there are a lot of people working on this initiative, which is really exciting, very, very exciting. I'm really looking forward to, to the next phase. So this is my last slide to thank you. And this is the list of the different references that I've been referring to in my presentation. This is my email address. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you would be interested in, if you have further questions, or if you would be maybe interested in joining the CM. As I said, it's expert-based, it's nature-based solutions thematic group. There are a lot of, specifically on NBS, but there are a lot of different thematic group that could be really relevant to what you are working on in your research. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much. It was really interesting. I think the audience appreciate it a lot. Especially a super thank, because you were not in the best conditions. So we leave you in case we will share the mail for questions. And we would like to thank you very, very much for participating.
Yes, please don't hesitate to reach out with any question, or if you will be interested in joining the thematic group.
Thank you. Okay, so now we will be moving on with the next intervention from Dr. Bilal Adem Esmail. Actually, he's a member of the Planning Metropolitan Landscape Lab at Ruhr-Universität Bochum. He had a postdoctoral position at the KTH Royal Institute of Technology and the Planes Lab of the University of Trento. So he was a friend of our university. As well, he holds a PhD on ecosystem services, watershed management and planning, and he has a degree in civil engineering from the University of Trento. So welcome, thank you very much for joining, and I leave you the floor for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nicola, for the kind presentation. And also thank you very much, Emmanuelle, for this very insightful presentation. It actually makes it a little bit challenging to take the stage after you, I hope. So for today, I was asked to present a couple of examples from the Global North and Global South to show how planning for nature-based solutions could look like, perhaps in more practical terms. And for this, I selected a couple, these two case studies, one on planning NBS for sustainable river landscapes in Germany, and the other one is for watershed investments for water security and poverty alleviation in a watershed in Eritrea. So I had to borrow one of the case studies from my team. So so my team, this is the Places Lab, and our mission is to advance excellent teaching and research to support just and sustainable transformations for people and nature in metropolitan regions. About myself, you already said this, but yeah, I did my bachelor's, master's, and PhD at the University of Trento, so I sort of feel part of that big community, and I, yeah, would really, I mean, I'm happy to join you virtually, at least. So let me start by telling you the story of a river. A river whose destiny was decided by a king a couple of centuries ago, when he decided to explore the ores in his region and use this river as the main channel of communication. However, this is the glorious story of the land river as a transportation channel was short-lived because of the introduction of the train. But in the meantime, it has been substantially transformed. So fast forward to today, this is how the landscape around the river land looks like, which provides several benefits for the society in terms of habitat for species, agriculture, and also recreational activities. But if you look closely, this landscape is not without challenge. To start with, the river has been substantially transformed, with dams, weirs was for transportation and energy production. But second, it's far from reaching the good ecological quality according to the Water Framework Directive. And last but not least, flooding risks. I mean, the images of flooded German cities from last summer are, let's say, still fresh in our memories. But the problems or the story of the land is not unique. It's actually the story of many rivers in Europe or globally, which have been somehow substantially transformed to meet our needs, basically. So much so that these two federal ministries of transport and environment for the first time joined forces and launched this Blue Ribbon program, which aims to sort of restore, especially this secondary subordinate federal waterways. So, and this was also the years in which the European Commission and also other organizations, as we have just seen from the previous talk, were pushing for this idea and concept of nature-based solutions. So in this context, the aim of our team was to introduce an approach for planning nature-based solutions and to illustrate a practical application of it. Of course, the first challenge was to define nature-based solutions, because the concept is let's say, such an overarching concept that it can be easily confused. So it was important to have clear criteria. So for us, nature-based solutions are nature-based solutions that address a specific societal challenge, for example, flood risk mitigation, and they use ecosystem processes that are produced by spatial blue and green infrastructure networks. And third, they have to be embedded within viable governance or business models. Of course, there are some complementary characteristics which are often highlighted. And this is the idea of co-benefits. Yes, they have co-benefits, but there are also co-costs. The second aspect is there is often a time lag between until the full benefits of the nature-based solutions could be harnessed. And yes, sometimes they can be cost-effective. So with this understanding, the next step was to develop an approach, a 6 steps based approach for planning MBS. So the first step is to co-define the settings, which basically means understanding, so clarifying the context and identifying who are the key stakeholders and involving them systematically, and managing expectations. Because it seems that nature-based solutions would solve all our problems, but perhaps this is not the case. The second step is to understand the challenges. And by this, meaning assessing the problems and what opportunities we have of cross-scale measures, if we have some past dependencies, and to develop a really systematic understanding involving the different stakeholders. The third step is to create visions and scenarios. And this would require really to rethink radically what could be possible features that are, let's say, good for people and nature. What are, let's say, spatial opportunities for localizing MBS, and how to combine scenario narratives and simulations. The fourth step is assessing the impacts. But considering the multiple, let's say, dimensions of the impact, both the primary target, but also the co-benefits. And then it's about developing solution strategies within viable governance and business models, creating suitable policy mixes, making sure we have sufficient resources. And last but not least, to realize and implement the nature-based solutions. So maybe starting with small pilots and making sure that we have, let's say, implemented a system of systematic learning and of adaptive governance. Here we suggest that the implementations could be designed at a common ground or as a boundary object between different actors. And some principles, which are, as I would say, pretty similar to those that Emmanuelle has just presented. So place specificity, evidence-based, integration, equity, and transdisciplinarity. So the actual implementation of the project was done in the context of 2 parallel projects, a 5-year Plan Smart project and a 10-year LIFE project. So the implementation was done in a form of a living lab, the LAN lab platform for cooperation involving different actors from academia up to different federal and different type of stakeholders. Yeah. So the application was limited to the first 4 stages, and so starting from the first stage, it's co-defining the setting. So this was done, for example, by looking at different MBS actions that could be implemented. And here we identified almost 600 over nature-based actions. And we tried to see how they connect to different locally defined sustainable development goals. So for example, if you look at revitalizing historic floodplains, you would see that it would contribute to many of the locally defined goals. Again, exploring what are, let's say, what is the level of uptake of MBS in different rivers within Germany. So here, what you see in green is are the nature-based solutions, and well, the key message here is that there is still potential for increasing this kind of measures in river management. So the second step, understanding the challenges. So this was done, for example, by looking at what are, let's say, spatial opportunities for implementing MBS. So here, lighter green are opportunity spaces of more than 10 hectares. So in darker green, less than 10 hectares. So these are all, let's say, areas where we could potentially implement MBS. But at the same time, there was also this other research looking at what are, let's say, what is the perception of the people, what is the people and place relationship. So this was a PPGIS study looking at how the local community perceives the river and different reaches of it. Third step in terms of creating scenarios, visions and scenarios, this was done by using different techniques to stimulate really radically rethinking the future of the river. And finally, to assess the potential impacts. This was done in a sort of in a geodesign workshop where stakeholders had the possibility to really interact with by defining different scenarios spatially in a spatially explicit way. So how does this look like? For example, here we have the stakeholders changing land uses, which are simulating the implementation of different MBS solutions. And what you see here, now they run the simulation, and on the fly, you have the assessment of the impact in terms of 4 ecosystem services within each reach. So here, the 4 ecosystem services are climate regulation, pollination, for production and recreation. And see here, you see the before and after the simulation. So and this kind of information would then be used to let's say change and discuss among themselves and maybe propose different solutions during the workshop. So just to summarize, in this study we proposed these 4 criteria for defining MBS and those principles for their implementation. These are the stakeholders from different ministries and institutions that participated in the workshop. Now let's change gears and let's go to our Global South example. So this is the most famous Eritrean that I could I found to let's say to introduce our next example, which is, I hope you will be. Can you see the?
Yes, we see it. We don't see this.
Maybe you don't see this. You don't hear the sound, I guess.
We don't hear the sound. Yes.
Yeah. So this is just to give you an idea of the landscape that. So this is the outskirts of Asmara, the capital city of Eritrea.
Sorry, Bilal, we are not hearing you well. We couldn't hear you for a while. I don't know if it's the microphone.
Could you hear me?
Yes, now we do. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I think it doesn't work with the. But you have an idea of what the landscape looks like. Again, here in the Toker watershed, we have a different type of societal challenges. The first, as I said, is the rapid urbanization. So Asmara is rapidly growing. We have issues of water scarcity and soil erosion in the watershed, and issues of rural poverty. So in this case, the context was mainly the ecosystem service concept, and more specifically, the research was developed within my PhD thesis at the University of Trento, where we're trying to operationalize the concept of ecosystem services for supporting adaptive watershed management and planning. And more specifically in this research, the aim was to develop an operational approach for designing watershed investments to sort of promote some MBS-based actions and to assess their impact. So I think you are familiar with the concept of ecosystem services, but just as a reminder, the idea is that we have different services that are provided for ecosystem service by ecosystems that sustain human well-being in terms of meeting their material needs and security, health, also our freedom of choice and action as individuals and societies. So what we argue here is that, I mean, ecosystem services do not flow effortlessly, but they need some sort of input in terms of infrastructure, knowledge, to actually benefit people. And this is particularly the case in cities, and more specifically in the urban water sector, where we have infrastructures and institutions that make sure that those ecosystem services actually are flowing to meet our needs. This is particularly relevant in medium-sized cities in Africa and in Asia, which will be hosting the next additional 2.5 billion urban dwellers in the next 10 years. Of course, this is against, let's say, lack of infrastructural and institutional capacity in many of the cities, and also the reduced capacity of ecosystems to provide this kind of benefits. So we started by sort of conceptualizing the role of these infrastructures within the ecosystem service concept, and we proposed this conceptual framework trying to link, let's say, different areas of ecosystem service production and benefit with the infrastructures, the role in bridging different spatial scales and different ecosystem services. But I would like to highlight here what we call ecosystem-based responses, for example, in terms of acting on land use or increasing knowledge and governance, efficiency, and so on, which somehow could be considered as forms of nature-based actions. So watershed investments. Watershed investments to promote MBS, they consist of, let's say, they are financial and governance mechanisms to secure water for cities by involving upstream communities in promoting some MBS-related actions. So those actions could be in terms of protection, agricultural management, revegetation, or terracing. And by investing in those activities, we would be able to achieve multiple objectives and co-benefits in terms of, for example, reducing soil erosion, mitigating flood, but also addressing issues of biodiversity or even other social goals such as poverty alleviation. And so for the practical application, we focus on the Toker watershed, which is, let's say, the main water supply for the city of Asmara. The dam was built almost 20 years ago. It has a value of $44 million. And it is serving the city of Asmara, which is this medium-sized city, almost 500,000 inhabitants, which account for half of the urban population in the country. So more specifically, our focus was on the challenge of soil erosion, which is on the one hand impacting, let's say, reducing the annual storage capacity of the dam. Some studies estimate up to from 0.5 to 2%, which is basically we are losing from $250,000 to $800,000 per year. At the same time, soil erosion is affecting, like, let's say, crop and livestock yield production, which is the main source of income of the rural communities. So in this case, we had in mind two objectives. On the one hand, securing water for the city, on the other, reducing rural poverty alleviation. So the question is, So which activities, when and where in the watershed yield the greatest return and under different investment scenarios? And what is the impact on the ecosystem service provision as well as on the other related social goals? Of course, here the challenge is that we need to involve different types of actors, different types of knowledges, and different planning levels, which is a key challenge. So we conceived this process-based approach, in which we distinguish sort of a strategic component consisting of really an initial stage where you set the agenda, define the goals, the budget, and so on. And this is followed by like a more specific definition of the different investment scenarios. And finally, in terms of assessing the performance of different, let's say, investment scenarios. On the other hand, we have the technical components, which is in terms of collecting the biophysical information, tailoring the models, and running the different models to design the investment portfolios and assess their impact in terms of ecosystem services. So this is the application in the specific case study, where we considered a 10-year planning horizon, different budget levels from 10,000 per year up to 1 million per year, and considered 4 activities of restoration, agricultural management, protection, and terracing. So I just wanted to show you some examples from the output. So in terms of investment portfolios, so if we focus on urban water security as our main goal, the first year of investment would look like this. So darker green is protection. These are areas that need to be protected. Light green, agricultural vegetation, and so on. And this is how the investment would evolve within the 10 years. Of course, if the priority is on rural poverty alleviation, we would have a different set of investments. So looking at, let's say, different budget levels and the 2 main goals, these are, let's say, the impacts in terms of reducing soil erosion or enhancing the ecosystem service of soil and sediment retention. So overall, we considered 38 different scenarios, looking at the different investment objectives and different ways of allocating the budget. And this is the type of result that we have at sort of at the sub-watershed level. So, for example, here, investing 250,000 per year would reduce soil erosion by 25%, while only by 15% if the budget is of 100,000. The idea here is that this type of information would be really crucial at this stage for allowing stakeholders or decision makers to identify and select the actual investment in the watershed. So to summarize, we have seen these 2 case study applications of planning for MBS to address different societal challenges in global north and global south context. And my take-home message would be, first of all, to acknowledge that this MBS is an umbrella concept, which has different dimensions: the strategic dimension, the spatial dimension, the soft engineering dimension, and the performance dimension. So it's really, so for example, focusing on the water sector, I found this kind of diagram really informative, where you see the MBS as an overarching concept, but there are also a number of other concepts that have evolved within different communities. So best practice management, alternative techniques, or sustainable urban water, drainage, low impact development, and so on, which have, let's say, a different level of specificity, from being specific techniques to broad principles. And they could be limited to stormwater management or to the entire integrated urban water system. So it is really important to acknowledge this, and so that we, let's say, we don't reinvent the wheel, but we can actually benefit from knowledge and expertise that is already out there. Of course, second is that we need clear criteria and principles for guiding our understanding of MBS, and the efforts by the IUCN that Emmanuelle has just presented are perhaps even more, let's say, more more broadly accepted than this one that I'm presenting here. And last is to think of planning for MBS as an iterative process. Yeah. Thank you very much for your attention, and yeah.
Thank you very much, Bilal. I think it was really interesting as well, the presentation. Thank you for letting us travel a little bit. Now I would open the time for questions, especially for Bilal and Jarumi, if you have any. And let's discuss about it. I don't know if in presence or whom someone has something to answer. If you can come here, so thank you.
Okay, hi. I have a question for Blau. I would be interested in how did you assess the impacts that you mentioned in your case study? If it was like with stakeholders just by participatory methods, or you used also some sort of modeling?
So which case study are you referring? The German one, or?
Yeah, the German one.
The German one, okay, yeah. So the German one, as I said, this was not my research, it's the research from my team. So, but what I can refer is that the assessment was done in two ways. So first was through modeling, basically looking at how different MBS actions affect the provision of ecosystem services, so they looked at how the different MBS affected the climate regulation, food provision, pollination, and recreation.
Okay.
But it was also done by asking, let's say, the experts that participate in the process of geodesign, their expert opinion on what could be like potential impacts of the different scenarios. In the case of the Tokar watershed, again, this was done by modeling the impacts in terms of soil erosion. So we use the universal soil loss equation model.
Thank you. And I have like another question. If I can jump in your Eritrea case study, have you somehow included the indigenous local knowledge if you included the indigenous local knowledge in the process somewhere in your research, or it was excluded?
Maybe something that I should have mentioned is the research was mainly desk-based research, and in fact, in the application of the approach, we just focused more on the technical components, so in terms of the modeling. And while we had many of the, let's say, assumptions made by us, which was based on some review of policies, and they were reasonable enough somehow. In terms of including local knowledge, we didn't do any direct, let's say, interview, but we had some discussions with local policymakers, and we reviewed some local documents. That's how.
Thank you.
Okay. Chat. Anyone else has any question, even online or?
Hi, Blau.
Hello, nice to see you.
For both of you, and unfortunately, Emmanuelle has gone. My first question is about the transformation from a voluntary basis, the application of this measure-based solution approach, to a mandatory solution-based approach, for instance, in urban planning or in planning of development, local development, and even in the great scale, for instance, in the application of the 2030 agenda. And the second question is about the role of population in applying nature-based solution and maintaining over the years the application of solutions and infrastructure, green infrastructures, etc. How to combine the participation and to the custody chain of these infrastructures, because many times we are very, very keen in planning, in preparing, in setting up these solutions, but not in maintaining them. And at the same time, I think that could be a challenge for development cooperation actors involving people in creating infrastructure and maintaining them, and as a challenge also for job creations, for instance, etc. So it's my curiosity, if in your studies you are thinking of how to transform in an opportunity for people. Thank you.
Thank you. So shall I go for the? I think I'm the only one here. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Prof. It's a very interesting question, and I'm not quite sure I have the right answers, but I will try. So in terms of making MBS compulsory, at least within urban context, I think this could be, let's say, viable, and to a certain extent is already happening. So, for example, we could have regulations that ask new developers to include a certain amount of MBS, or rather than maybe make it compulsory, it could also be based on some incentives to include those kind of solutions. The second, regarding the involvement of the population in the implementation and the maintenance of MBS. I think, I mean, if one of the principles that I mentioned was that MBS should be embedded within viable governance and business models. which basically means that if they are to be part of the, let's say, infrastructure of a city, then we would basically need some sort of institution, as we have institutions for other types of infrastructures, that would need to, let's say, keep, manage, and maintain those kind of infrastructures. If somehow there is also the need of involving the community, the direct users, this means that this somehow should be included as well. And of course, there are, let's say, few studies looking at the perception of local communities that are living near and around MBS that has been implemented. And of course, this gives some, let's say, some insight on how this could be done practically. Yes, but of course, involving the communities in the planning and the implementation would be crucial. How to do it practically, maybe, yeah, that could be another challenge.
Thank you. I will leave the floor to Jarumi.
Well, I think that at least from the perspective of environmental justice, one of the challenges that we are facing is like procedural justice. How can we incorporate different knowledge and values of communities? Because one of the things that I didn't mention is that in order for communities to accept the kind of MBS that we're proposing, we need to see a usefulness in these kind of solutions. So I think that it's very important to strive for participatory processes that are more meaningful. And I think this is one of the most interesting aspects of research that still need to be, let's say, addressed. I think in the case of nature-based solutions, we already have these kind of ideas when we talk about co-designing or co-thinking of potential ways of implementing nature-based solutions in urban areas. But there's still this lack of involvement, especially of the most vulnerable populations, which is a challenge. And regarding making nature-based solutions, let's say, like obligatory in planning from the planning perspective, I think that what Bilan is saying, it's really true. We need to consider all types of approaches, for example, incentives, but also considering that greening is not necessarily always good for communities. And we can have very negative consequences. For example, the case of gentrification is where people get, let's say, displaced from the residents through the rising of prices, property prices. So I think as planners need to take into consideration other kind of strategies to avoid these maladaptation outcomes. But that's why I think that making MBS obligatory from the planning perspective would be very difficult, and also it can have a very negative consequences. So we need to work with communities and not against them.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, suggestions? Okay. If not, 3, 2, 1. No. Okay. If there are no more questions, I would like to thank you very much for joining us. I think it was a really interesting meeting with many people in presence. I think a record so far. And yeah, it was a really good pleasure to have you with us. Now maybe we can stop the recording and have a little bit a moment of chat within us, like to conclude. And yeah, so thank you very much, Bilal, Jarumi, and Emmanuelle. That must go. And see you hopefully in the next editions.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and yeah, hope to meet you in person and next time.
It was a pleasure.